Hello friends, welcome to the 8th session of Selenium WebDriver beginner series. So before jumping into the day 8 topic, let us recap what we learned so far. So we started with installation part, it's a day 1 topic, and where I explained and shown about how do we install Java, how do we install Eclipse, and how do we download it from the sites. And also I explained about how to set the home path, and also I have explained about how do we create Eclipse project for Selenium using Maven plugin. In the day 2 session, we have learned about how do we launch various browsers. So just to give you brief about it, we have looked at launching the browsers, and we downloaded various drivers for Chrome, Firefox, and IE, and we have used system.set property and the downloaded driver.exe path, and we learned about how do we create WebDriver object, like WebDriver new equals to new Firefox driver or Chrome driver or IE Explorer driver. So like that, we have seen how do we launch various browsers. And day 3, we have learned about object identification, how Selenium identify various objects, and how the find element works and what is the difference between find element and elements. Also, we have looked at driver dot find element, and we by dot various methods like by dot id, by dot name, by dot xpath, by dot css selector, by dot tag name, by dot class name, by dot link text, by dot partial link text. So we have seen various APIs or various methods to identify objects using Selenium WebDriver. Also, as a part of day 4 session, I have explained about how do we interact with text boxes, like to enter value, send keys, to clear the value, dot clear method. To get some value from the text box, we have looked at get text or get attribute to retrieve the various attribute values. So that is a part of day 4. And day 5, I have explained about how do we interact with the checkboxes. We discussed about what is the how to get the existing selection status, means to verify whether checkbox is selected or not. So for that, we have looked at is selected method. Also, we have used dot click in order to click on checkbox with some conditional, like if driver dot find element by dot xpath or whatever the object identification of the checkbox. Dot is selected we have used. If it is selected, then dot click will unselect it. If it is unselected, then dot click will deselect the checkbox. So that is the day 5th session. You can go through my previous videos to get more insights and to know how to work on those. So you can always refer to the previous sessions. Okay. And day 6, we have seen about working with the select boxes. So how select boxes looks like, and how do we verify it's a select box, it's a combo box or list box, and how to retrieve all the options like dot get options, and how do we retrieve the selected options, get all selected options, and how do we select the items from the list box or combo box, like select by index, select by value, select by visible text. So these various components we have looked at, and we learned, and we have done some hands-on examples on checkboxes and list boxes. So this is pretty much we covered in previous sessions, and each and every session's videos are there. You can, if you look at my day 1, day 2 up to day 7, you can see my previous videos, so that you will have a clear understanding of the next sessions. So let's get into the day 8 session. So in day 8 session, we will look at UI interact with radio buttons. So, so radio buttons are one of the HTML controls where you can select to proceed with some certain UI actions. So generally with the radio buttons, you will retrieve the selection status, means it is selected or not, and you will see we'll learn how and what is the WebDriver Selenium method to get its status, and we will look at how to select the radio buttons. And we'll see one example how to write the code using Selenium. So the first is the isSelected method. isSelected method will return the true or false boolean values. If the radio button is selected, then it returns true. If not, then that is returns as a false. So this is similar to the checkboxes. Technically, both are similar. Like the click means will select, and isSelected will return you the true false values. So this is example driver dot find element by dot id mail. This is the id of your radio button because we used by dot id. So it means this is id property, and dot is selected means it will return true. If it is selected, then returns false. So let us look at one example. I'm creating one new project. So a new package, as it's a day 8. So I'm creating day 8 package. Right click, new. I'll be creating one new class, and as a best practice we are naming it as UI underscore interact underscore radio button, and select this so that main method will be added to your class. Okay, so this is the area again which we are using to write our Selenium code, and obviously the first step is to launch the browser, right? So to launch the browser, what is the code? Okay, so this is the code I copied as we discussed this many times. So I just used the copied from previous session and put over here, and I'm putting some breakpoint, right click and then do. So now debug as. So once you run it, it will command hold or pause your execution at breakpoint. Now this is launched. Okay, so your browser is here, and the driver.get will launch the local web page. So this is my web page, and you see there are radio buttons, male or female. This is the question we need to answer using Selenium WebDriver. So the first step is generally we need to know the properties. So for that, right click and inspect this. Right click. Sorry. Oops. Okay, so this is the one. And now what is the property? Input radio id equals to male. Okay, so copy this, name, gender or id male, whatever. I think both are the best examples. Either you can use id or name. So what is the way to identify web element? It's a driver dot find element, right? So first we'll see how to get the selection status, whether it is selected or not. So first identify using driver dot find element by dot what you copied over here, id, right? So you need to use by dot id. Okay, so paste the one which we copied there. Okay, so dot, we are looking at is selected, right? So just select that. Okay, now select this. Okay, so it is not selected right now, so means is selected should return false. Inspect, you see it's a false value. If you select it, now assume that I selected this. Now what should be the return value? It should return as a false. Inspect, sorry, true, because it is selected. So this is how how the radio button selection status can be retrieved using is selected method. Hope you got me right. So let's move on to the next. So now we discussed how to verify the default status. But now let's look at how do we select the radio button if it is unselected. So there is no specific method in WebDriver to select the radio button, but we can only use the click. So the problem of using click is it doesn't know whether by default it is selected or not. So that while using this, we need to be careful. Okay, so we'll see what care we need to be. So the care should be this particular line, means before doing our action, we need to check whether it is selected or not. So our purpose is to select the radio button. To select it, what we are putting one condition. If this is not selected, only click it. This is to just to make sure, right? What happens if it is already selected, right? So we don't need to do something on that if it is already selected. So we wanted to click on this when if it is not selected. So for that I used some conditional operator over here. If not selected, then click it so that the radio button would be selected by click action. So this is what about select radio button. So this is a best practice I am telling you, because you see there is a code redundancy. Redundancy means there is a code duplicacy. So here I define the code. Here I define the code. So means the driver will take certain time to find the element. So means the two times the driver has to interact with your DOM, means interact with your browser. So to reduce that, you this is a common part, right? So in any programming language, common part can be eliminated by using variables. So the driver dot find element, this is one code, and I'm storing in a variable radio button gender. And what is it's a type of variable? It's a type of web element. So I stored over here. So now rather than using twice, I used only declared over here, and I have used over here. I have used over here. So if somewhere again, if I wanted to use it, I don't need to use driver dot find element. Simply I can use it radio button gender for that particular page. If there is a page change, again you need to use driver dot find element because the session is already gone, right? So this is one of the best practice you can follow for this particular example. Okay guys, let's see how it works. So we have a session opened over here. So this session is live right now. I haven't closed it. So these are the radio buttons which we are trying to interact. Okay, so now I'm just commenting it. This is the best way to write any programming language. You need to comment it so that it's obviously you refer this code in future. So better to give a proper comment so that later point you will understand what you written. Okay. So if so this is the condition, right? So if it is selected, sorry, demissed driver dot find element is selected. So not selected, right? So I used not condition. I'm sorry, not exclamation means it's a negative. It's a negative means not condition. If WebDriver is not selected, then click on that particular button. So I'm copying the code, copy it, paste it over here. Dot click. Very simple, right? So now you can evaluate this. Maybe you need to rerun it because the if condition may not be evaluated during runtime. Oops, it works. That's nice. You see, it's selected. Now you do it and won't unselect it. It will still works because it's already selected. So no click event would be triggered. Got it? So this is how you can select your radio buttons, and this is the best way to use conditional based. Got it? So moving on to the next. So far I've played certain videos to interact with radio buttons. Now let's do some hands-on. So the first step is to navigate to so and so site. It's Naukri forgot password website, and check email ID radio button is selected by default. and select username radio button and close the browser window. So this is your uh, practice session. So let's do some hands-on right away. So I'm navigated to this website. So to work on it, we need to have a Eclipse opened. This is my Eclipse. Okay. So the day 7 session we skipped because I have given for your exercise. Okay. So select it, new. As a best practice, create a package. It's not necessary, but in this training videos, I'm following certain naming conventions. So for every day, I'm creating one package, day_08. This is my package. Right click, new class. So what are we discussing about? UI underscore interact underscore radio button. Okay. So if you select it, the main method will be executed, will be added in a class. If not, it won't be added. Still no worries, the empty class was generated. Now save it. Now add main method, just type main, use control space, and this will give you some predefined code. Use this code, save it. Now what is the first step? We need to launch the WebDriver. So to launch the WebDriver, what is the code? Driver, okay, equals to new, means we need to define, right, which driver, means WebDriver you can define. Okay, you need to import this session. So if you double click, it automatically imported. So driver equals to new. What you wanted to use, you can use Firefox, means the Firefox driver class should be used. So we need to use the system.set property. So I'm copying it from previous session because this is a duplicate code which we are doing every time. So I'm copying these lines. Okay, so I copied this. The driver object is set now. Now driver dot. So this is not properly aligned. So to align it, you can select all the code, Control A. Okay, you can say Control I, so that whatever you do, suppose I did this like this. This is not a well managed code. So to do well indent, select it, Control I, then the code will be in a good structured. Okay, so now open the application. So we have seen one example, right? Driver dot get command will open the application, and we need to pass the URL. So what is the URL which we are looking at? We are looking at this URL. Okay, so I think I'm already launched this somewhere. Let me do one thing. This is the one, right? Okay, so this is there. Okay, so copy this URL. This is the URL. Okay, so now what we wanted to do, what is the next step? Check email ID radio button is selected by default. Okay, so by default this is selected, right? I wanted to verify, this is my test case or use case. So to check it first, we need to know this object HTML properties. To know that, right click, inspect. Okay, so input, I think you can use the name or you can use the ID, right? So copy this ID property, Control C, copy. Okay, so identifying the radio button. Okay, so driver, hey, web driver dot find element is a method. Okay, and by dot id and paste that because we copied id, so we need to use by dot id over here. Okay, so what we are trying to do, hey WebDriver, find element by means using this id, that is what, let's reset via hyphen email. Okay, so dot what is our expected thing, check it is selected by default. Okay. Okay, so what is the method? Is selected. You can write is selected. So if you want, you can use some condition. If this is selected, okay. So now system dot out dot println pass means if it is selected, pass. Else system dot println fail. This is what the script. Okay. So what is the last step? Select the username radio button. Okay, means we need to select the username radio button. So to select it first, we need to know the property of this radio button. Select, inspect. Okay, this is the input, right? Type radio. Okay. Now this is the property of this particular thing. Okay. So now again driver dot find element by dot id. Copy this. Got it. So dot click means we need to select that radio button. Got it. So if you wanted to be execute only if it is not selected, means we need to use the if else statement, means if driver dot, this is a best practice, right? We discussed at beginning, right? Is selected. Now dot click means here I am doing clicking if it is selected, but I wanted to select it, right? So if not selected, only click it. So use not condition, save it. Again, one best practice, because here it's a duplicate code. Here you see, here you see, right? So now you need to move this particular, put in some variable. Okay. So suppose variable means many people will understand string x equals to this. So will this work? No, because so we are storing an web element, so means whatever this method returns. So if you look at this method is returning web element, so only web element variable can hold this particular return value. So means x is now you define as a string, but it should be web element. See, that's what Eclipse is showing, change type of x to web element. Now this is now enable or capable to hold this, because this is a web element type and we also declared as a web element. Now instead of writing over here, you can write if x dot is selected, then x dot, because we are removing the duplicacy. Instead of repeating two times, I stored it in a variable and I'm using it as a variable value. Okay. So but again, x is not the best way, because you need to use meaningful names. Instead of this, I can write radio button underscore username. Okay, so do this, control C, this and this. Got you guys? Okay, now you've done this. So what is the last step we need to do? We need to close the browser window. So what is to close the browser window? Driver dot close. You can use quit as well. This is done. So now you can run and execute this test script. So to run this, you can run in a run mode so that you cannot see what is going on, what's happening. So better put some breakpoint and evaluate each condition and run it. Okay. Okay, guys. So right click. So if you double click, the breakpoint would be added. Right click, debug as you see Firefox launched and this particular web is launched. Oh, something wrong, unable to locate with some this property. So means there is some issue in identifying this property, means identifying this radio button. So let's see what is the issue over here. So this issue might be due to the weight, or so because there is no synchronization. The topic we'll discuss later. So before I confirm, let's put some breakpoint over here. Okay, close this, right click, debug as. Now loading. Okay, now just right click, select it, inspect. You got it, means now this is true because it is already selected. So the earlier issue was because the application is too faster, the script is too faster, but by that time the application is not yet loaded the element. So it's like it's thrown some no such element exception. So this is called as a synchronization issues, which to handle these issues we have another topic at around day 15th or some around day 12th, where we'll discuss about handling the synchronization issues. So currently you can ignore it and just focus on how the radio button topics will work. Okay, so now step by step it is passed because this email select radio button is selected. Okay, so test case pass. Now if this not selected means username is not selected right now. So first identify, okay, this condition is met because it's not selected, and then click. Oops, this is some error. What is the issue? Unable to interact with radio button. So maybe something wrong with it. Okay, let us retry it. So this is also one of the issue which we'll discuss. Prior that, let's see, we declared enough. Good. Yeah, radio button not selected, then click it. This is fine. Debug as. Okay, so this is there. I think this is good. Pass. Now see, if it is not selected, this is fine. So there is some issue. This is element not interactable exceptions. So somehow there is some issue with interacting with this. So anyhow, we'll see this later. So because we'll handle these kind of issues in future classes. So currently you can ignore it, but just understand what are we talking about. So we are talking about interacting with the radio buttons. So this is the way, like if it is not selected, only select this. So this is how you can interact with your radio buttons. So hope you got whatever I explained in this class. So just to recap, just to give a summary. So we looked at is selected to verify if the radio button is selected or not. So dot click can be used to click on radio buttons with some condition. Okay, so and select is means this is again to select it, nothing but click will click on it, but to select it, you need to use it with some condition. So that's the reason I use added another block. Means if you use some select along with selected, then this will work with expected way. So this is about interacting with radio buttons. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please subscribe and comment. If you have any questions or anything, you can comment it. Definitely I will try to respond to with best possible solutions. So thank you very much for watching this video. I will come up with the next class very soon. Thank you.